Hello, and welcome to Andy Fancher Presents, where today we meet Ellis H. Hobbs Jr., a retired Sergeant Major and 32-year veteran of the U.S. Army. In this three-part series titled Now You Know Me, Mr. Hobbs will share with us, for his first time on camera, his captivating story of a small-town country boy turned military hero.
Okay. I was born in Coolidge, Texas, and I was raised first part of my life up until I was 8 years old in Mahia, Texas. And then in 1950, my mother was killed by my father. And he took us by my grandmother's house, left us, disappeared. So from 1954 until 1957, I lived with my grandmother, and we had a rough life. I had no childhood. We picked cotton, chopped cotton, hauled hay, picked tomatoes, just whatever to make $1 or $2. And I got tired of it, so at the age of 15, I ran away from home.
Ellis Hobbs walked these railroad tracks out of Mahia, Texas, in search of a better life. A year later, after numerous family rejections from Dallas to Arizona, Ellis acquired a $39 bus ticket to Chicago.
After 2 or 3 days in Chicago, being from Mahia, being a country boy, I realized I didn't belong in Chicago.
And so, a day after his 17th birthday, Ellis H. Hobbs enlisted in the Army and was transported by train from Chicago to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri.
And when I got there, I knew I was in the Army, and I just said, well, this is it. I am through with civilian life for the rest of my life. They issued me 2 pairs of boots, 1 pair of low quarters, my clothing. I had 3 meals a day, plus I was getting paid $72 a month. And I said, this is a lot better than I've had it in my life.
Mr. Hobbs finished basic training in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, and then volunteered for and successfully completed infantry training in Fort Benning, Georgia. He was then selected to attend airborne school in Fort Bragg, North Carolina, under the 82nd Airborne.
So I loaded on my first plane. Never been on a plane before. I flew to Fort Bragg, North Carolina. We get there, and I go through airborne school. It was rough. Nothing I had been through in basic training was compared to airborne school. So I finished that and got my wings, and then I had to go through my training for my MOS, which was 11 Bravo Infantry.
Shortly after completing his MOS training, Ellis Hobbs received a visit from his company commander with orders to move to Okinawa.
I went to California, loaded on the USS Breckenridge, and sailed for 14 days and went to Okinawa. At the time, we didn't know that we were preparing for Vietnam, and that's what we were doing. But they just trained us and just trained us and just trained us. And we would go to the Philippines, Guam, places called Irimoto, Ishigaki. We would go there for guerrilla training. And we became the 173rd Airborne. I was in the 82nd Airborne Division when I went over.
Upon his return to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, Ellis was then transferred back to the 82nd Airborne Division and was then assigned additional training in the Azores, which, as he later found out, was preparing him for the Dominican Republic.
So we trained over there, got used to the weather, did everything that we had to do. A couple of months later, we were in the Dominican Republic fighting.
After 6 months in the Dominican Republic, Ellis and a selected few were sent back to Fort Bragg and then to Turkey to fight on behalf of the brief Indo-Pakistan War of 1965.
So we parachuted into Turkey. And most of the stayed along the Black Sea, and they said, this is Black Sea, see all the Russian ships out there?
Luckily for Ellis, after 1 month in Turkey, this brief war was over.
So then they took us back to the United States, and then they said, everybody's going to Vietnam. So I got sent to the 1st Cavalry Division, 2nd and 7th Cav in Vietnam, and I ended up in Ashaw Valley. We went into the Ashaw Valley one afternoon. We were on patrol, and we ran up on 2 North Vietnamese soldiers. So while we were interrogating them, the guys that had dropped them off, they were getting set up for an ambush, to ambush us. And after we interrogated them, we took off. They told us that they were sick and they left them behind to die or survive. And we took off, and about 3 o'clock that afternoon, all hell broke loose. And they were everywhere in trees and everything. We started drawing fire from everywhere. The aircraft was coming in and they were dropping bombs. You know, people just all over the place. It was a big mess. So finally, a plane, it had a loudspeaker on it, and it told everybody to run towards Chu Point Mountain. That was the highest point there. We got up on it, and then that's where we had to fight for the next 24 hours. And it was so furious that they couldn't land helicopters, so they would just drop the ammunition from Chinooks and tell everybody to watch out below, keep your helmet on, and so you don't get hit by this ammo. So we fought all night long, and the next day they came in to relieve us, and that's when we realized we only had 4 people left. So the commander told us, you're not gonna go back out until you get rebuilt. But by January, we had been rebuilt, and they sent us to a place called Bonsong. You could hear it on the radio, you could hear all the cracking, you could hear screaming and hollering. And then they said, tomorrow you're going over there. And the next day, we went in there, and it just all hell broke loose.
I'm still receiving heavy fire, but I'd like to work in here and get over